Who the hell is she? The words cut through the Afghan dust like a blade. Someone shouted them across the outpost wall, half disbelief, half awe. 4 shots had just echoed through the valley. 4 bodies dropped, one after another, in less than 12 seconds. Every man at Combat Outpost Keating had gone silent. No one knew the name behind the rifle. They just saw the impossible unfold through the scope feed, the kind of precision you don't train, you inherit. She didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't even look up. Just exhaled, reloaded, and disappeared behind her scope again. That's how they met her. Petty Officer First Class Thea called her, or at least, that's what the paperwork said. No one at the outpost knew that name. No one knew what ghost unit she came from. But every man there would remember that voice in the dust. Who the hell is she? She walked into the Tactical Operations Center like she was walking into a storm she already knew would hit her. Thea kept her head low, the December cold biting through her combat shirt, the kind of cold that made every exhale hang in the air like a secret. Her rifle case, custom-built, matte black, was slung over her shoulder. Inside it, an Mk13 Mod 7. Winchester Magnum. Match grade, 220 grain ammunition. Her signature. Her language. Men stopped talking when she entered, not because of who she was, but because of what they didn't know about her. SEALs, Rangers, Green Berets, all in the same room, the air heavy with the smell of oil, dust, and caffeine. They glanced up from their maps and intel screens, eyes flicking from her subdued name tape to the black case at her side. She didn't belong here, not to them anyway. She'd spent years avoiding rooms like this. Places where lineage meant more than results. Where names carried more weight than actions. Her call sign was Ghost. Deliberately generic. The kind that left no trace on mission logs, no digital shadow. For 4 years she'd operated in silence, tucked inside classified annexes of task forces that didn't exist on paper. Even her teammates rarely knew her full name. And that was the point. She didn't want them to know she was the daughter of Master Chief Francis Reigns, the man who trained half the snipers in naval special warfare. The man whose notes were still quoted in sniper school like scripture. The man whose patience had rewritten the way the Navy thought about distance, wind, and death. But most of all, the man she'd lost before she'd ever truly known him. Thea's childhood smelled like gun oil and salt air. Rifle ranges from San Diego to Virginia Beach. Her father teaching her how to breathe, not just shoot. Trigger pull starts with your lungs, kid, he used to say. Breathing is the first battlefield. He never told her to join the military. He told her to understand precision. To see the world the way a sniper does, one heartbeat at a time. When he got sick, she thought he'd beat it. He always had. He'd survived 3 wars, a dozen deployments, and enough near-death moments to fill a lifetime. Cancer didn't seem like the thing that could take him. But it did. When he died, she found his journals in a locked footlocker, hundreds of pages, filled with equations, sketches, and reflections. Not about killing, about control, about patience. One line stood out. Written days before he died. Excellence needs no announcement. That became her creed. Her vow. She enlisted under her mother's maiden name to bury the Reigns legacy. No fast-tracking, no whispers, no expectations. Just work. She survived Bud S., Class 286, one of the few women to ever make it through. Never spoke of her father, never asked for anything. Every mark she earned came from sweat and silence. She graduated 4th in her sniper school class, though her instructors later admitted her cold-bore shots, the first round from a clean barrel, were the most consistent they'd ever recorded. But she deliberately held back. Attention was dangerous. Fame in her world could get you killed. So she stayed invisible. Until Afghanistan. Kunar Province. Korangal Valley. A place that chewed men up and buried them in silence. Her father had been here 20 years earlier. Now she was back, same mountain, same wind, same ghosts. That morning's briefing felt heavier than usual. Lieutenant Commander Brooks, SEAL team leader, stood at the front of the room, a map glowing red under the projector light. Target, Mansur, a Taliban commander who'd evaded capture through 4 failed missions. Each one cost lives. Each one ended the same way, counter-sniper fire from the ridgelines, surgical and lethal. Brooks didn't hide his frustration. Neither did his men. When the slide showed sniper support, Petty Officer First Class Calder, the murmurs started. Chief Martinez, senior enlisted, square jaw, 10 deployments, leaned back in his chair. Sir, we don't know anything about her. No record, no rep. She just shows up on our roster 2 weeks ago. You want us trusting Overwatch to someone nobody's even operated with? Thea didn't react. Didn't blink. She'd heard it all before. Another SEAL, Davis, chimed in. Sirs, we asked for someone from Delta's list, proven snipers, names we can verify, not some ghost attachment. The word hung in the air, ghost. They didn't know it was her call sign. Brooks defended her. Naval Special Warfare Command assigned her. Direct orders, based on performance metrics you don't have clearance to see. But the damage was done. Doubt has a way of echoing louder than orders. Martinez's final words landed hardest. This isn't a training op. Miss here and we're carrying bodies home. We need someone whose name means something. The irony made her want to laugh, or maybe scream. Her name meant everything. She just couldn't say it. That night she couldn't sleep. She climbed to the roof of the ops building, the air sharp, dry and endless. The Hindu Kush mountains stretched out like sleeping beasts. She laid her rifle beside her and pulled a small coin from her pocket, a worn challenge coin, edges smoothed from years of her father's hands. One side bore the SEAL trident. The other, an engraving he'd added himself. Actions, not words. He'd given it to her the night before entering hospice. Earn your way, Thea, he told her. Don't ever tell them who you are. If you have to explain it, you've already lost. She remembered that night vividly, the rasp of his breathing, the weight of his eyes. He knew she'd follow him. He'd seen it in her hands, her stillness, her obsession with control. He just didn't want to watch her become him. Tomorrow's mission would take her to the same ridgeline where he'd earned his 3rd Navy Cross. 18 hours pinned down in a Soviet fighting position to save a recon team. His after-action notes had been clinical. But one line, scrawled in the margin, stayed with her. West face 630, thermal rise 2.3 mil correction, 1,000 meters, miss and they die. She whispered the words under her breath. The wind seemed to carry them away, like it remembered him too. She didn't believe in signs, but she believed in echoes. In the idea that time folds on itself, that some moments replay until they find their ending. Thea had lived her whole life in her father's shadow. But here on this mountain, she wasn't chasing his legacy. She was facing it. She closed her eyes, the coin cold in her hand. Her breath fogged the night air. Below her, the compound lights flickered like dying stars. Tomorrow, she'd either prove herself or disappear again into the silence that made her who she was. And in that silence, she made a promise, not to the Navy, not to Brooks, not to the team that doubted her. To him, to the man who taught her that greatness never announces itself. It just acts. When the wind shifted, she could almost hear his voice. Let the rifle speak. She opened her eyes and whispered back, it will. They moved before dawn, the kind of darkness that doesn't just hide you, it swallows you whole. Two MH-47 Chinooks knifed through the night air, blacked out, hugging the valley floor. Thea sat near the rear ramp, helmet down, NVGs glowing faint green. The cabin was a low hum of vibration and tension, the smell of hydraulic oil, metal, and adrenaline. Nobody spoke, not because of discipline, because words felt fragile out here. She ran a gloved hand along the rifle resting across her knees, checking every screw, every dial. She cleaned it twice already, but ritual mattered. Ritual kept you steady when the world around you trembled. Petty Officer Williams sat opposite her, her spotter, younger by a decade, sharp-eyed but still green in the way he watched the horizon like it owed him something. He'd been the only one who treated her with normal respect, not curiosity or quiet suspicion. He caught her glance through the NVG glow. "You good?" She nodded once. Williams smiled slightly. Never seen anyone prep that calm before a Tier 1 op. She just adjusted her scope cap. "Calm isn't a feeling," she said quietly. "It's a choice." The ramp light flickered red to green. Insertion. The Chinook dropped to a hover barely 6 feet off the ground. Dust exploded outward. Thea and Williams fast-roped down, boots sinking into cold earth. The aircraft lifted and vanished into the dark. Silence reclaimed the valley. Only then did her heart start to beat again, slow, measured, deliberate. They moved light two-man sniper element, while the assault team advanced along a parallel ridge 8 clicks away. The terrain was brutal, jagged rock, loose shale, sparse vegetation that offered more sound than concealment. Every step crunched like a confession. Thea set her pace low, her breathing synchronized with the mountain. Wind rolled down from the peaks, cold enough to bite through gloves. It smelled of stone, snow, and gunpowder ghosts. She found the overwatch position by memory, or maybe instinct. Her father's journals had mapped it like scripture. Saddle Ridge, east face, 1,250 meters from compound. Optimal line of sight. Avoid upper crest. Thermals unstable before sunrise. When they reached the outcrop, she dropped prone, unpacked the rifle, extended the bipod, and felt the mountain settle beneath her. Williams crawled beside her, spotting scope already up. Visual on compound. "Negative," she murmured, "still in shadow, wait for dawn light." She scanned the valley through her scope. Nothing moved yet, just the gray, shapeless void between night and morning. Thea breathed slow. One in, one out. Each breath a countdown to whatever came next. Over the comms, Brooks's voice cracked through. "Ghost 4 status. In position. Overwatch set. Wind variable at 15 knots, temperature inversion forming. Copy, assault team on approach. Window opens in 5 mics." Williams checked his rangefinder. 1250 to primary compound, 110-0 to the east wall. Thea nodded. "Record it. If we lose visual, we'll need the correction." "Roger." The radio went quiet again. This was the part no one talked about, the stillness before chaos, the fragile seconds where a sniper lives in 2 worlds, the calm and the coming storm. She adjusted her dope card, 1,250 meters, 220 grain load, predicted drop 10.2 mils, left wind hold 1.3. She whispered the math under her breath, grounding herself. Then movement. Williams saw it first. Contact, ridge line northeast, possible sentry. She locked onto it, a faint human shape through the green haze, rifle slung, packing slow. The pattern was deliberate, professional. "Counter-sniper," she whispered. Her gut tightened. The same position her father had written about 20 years ago. Brooks's voice came again. "Ghost 4, we're T-3 mics. Can you neutralize?" She measured the shot in her mind. 1,130 meters, unstable air, crosswind variable. Technically possible, practically suicidal. Martinez broke in on the channel, irritated. "That's beyond effective range in this wind. Hold off, Ghost 4. We'll call for CAS if it goes south." But Thea wasn't listening to him. She was listening to the mountain. The wind pattern, she could feel it shifting. Her father had described it exactly. Morning thermals, 6:30 hours, steady rise from east face, 12-minute window of perfect stability. She checked her watch, 06:22. 8 minutes to perfection. Too long. The assault team would be inside the valley in less than 3. If she fired early, the bullet could drift, expose them all. If she waited, they'd walk straight into an ambush. 2 bad choices. No safe ones. She whispered to herself, actions, not words. Then she made her move. "Moving to secondary," she said, already crawling. Brooks snapped back instantly. "Negative, Ghost 4, hold position." But she was gone, low, deliberate, sliding over rock and shale, the rifle tight against her body. 40 meters of open ground separated her from the spot her father had once marked in the margins of his map, a depression that cut the range by 70 meters and offered a straighter wind corridor. She moved like water, every muscle memory and heartbeat measured. Williams followed, reluctant but trusting. "You're insane," he whispered. "Maybe," she breathed, "but accurate." When they reached the depression, she flattened out, extended the bipod again, and found the counter-sniper through the glass. Still there, still waiting. He had no idea death had just crawled 20 meters closer. The radio crackled, Ghost 4 status. She ignored it. Her world had narrowed to one breath, one trigger, one heartbeat. Then new movement. Williams stiffened. 3 more tangos, south slope, moving toward the assault route. She saw them, shadows peeling from rock. They were setting up for a crossfire. If she didn't act now, Brooks's team would walk into a kill zone. She felt her pulse slow. Time itself seemed to hesitate. 4 targets, she whispered, 1 mag. Williams adjusted the spotting scope, his voice calm but quick. Target 1, 1,080 meters. Hold 2.3 mils left for thermal. Thea inhaled. Exhaled. Squeezed. Crack. 1.6 seconds of flight. Impact, center mass. The counter-sniper folded backward without sound. Hit, Williams confirmed. She was already on target 2, adjusting 0.5 mil right for the changing wind. Second shot broke before Williams finished his correction. Target 2 down. Third target was moving, sprinting across her field of view. She tracked him, breath steady, pulse in sync with the scope sway. Fired between heartbeats. Impact. Last one turned, alerted. She led him 0.5 mil, just like Williams called. Fourth shot. 4 bodies down. 12 seconds. Silence. The radio exploded with confusion. Ghost 4, what the hell just happened? Williams answered for her. Threats neutralized, Overwatch clear. Thea didn't speak. She just watched the dust settle, feeling the rifle's warmth bleed into the cold rock. The operation below moved forward, assault team breaching, flashbangs flaring through her scope. Everything unfolded exactly as planned, like the universe had been waiting for this correction. But then another shadow. Second-story window. Manser himself. RPG launcher lifting toward the breach team. Range 1,190 meters. Wind shifting again. She recalculated on instinct, 3 mils high, 2 right. Held her breath. Pressed. The rifle kicked once. Through the scope she saw the man jerk back, weapon slipping from his hands, tumbling unfired. The launcher hit the floor inside the window, harmless. She stayed locked in for 3 heartbeats, confirming. Then exhaled finally. Target down, she said quietly. The compound fell in 4 minutes. No American casualties. When the all-clear came over comms, Thea rolled onto her back, staring up at the pale sky. It felt wrong to breathe again, like she hadn't earned it yet. Williams was grinning beside her. 4 and 12 seconds. You just made history, Ghost. She shook her head. No, I made a promise. They started their descent toward the landing zone as the sun finally crested the ridge. The valley turned gold, silent, almost peaceful, the kind of peace that comes only after something violent decides it's over. Back at the compound, Brooks found her cleaning her rifle outside the TOC. He crouched beside her, voice low, respectful now. Ghost 4, that shot, those shots. Where the hell did you learn to read wind like that? She hesitated. The coin in her pocket felt heavier than usual. There were 100 ways she could have answered. She chose the truth. My father taught me. Brooks frowned. Your father. She met his eyes. Master Chief Francis Reigns. For a moment the world seemed to stop. Brooks blinked, stunned. Martinez, standing nearby, froze mid-motion. Everyone in naval special warfare knew that name. The legend. The ghost who'd trained the best of them, who'd written the formulas they still used, the man whose shadow they all lived under. And his daughter had been here all along, proving his legacy with every breath, every trigger press, every silent decision. Williams finally broke the silence. That's why your cold bore shots are perfect. He made you do them every morning, didn't he? She smiled faintly. Since I was 7. Word spread faster than gunfire. But it didn't spread like gossip, it spread like reverence. The ghost had a name. And the name carried weight again. The after-action report would later read. Petty Officer First Class Thea Reigns. 5 confirmed kills between 1,080 and 1,290 meters. Exceptional ballistic calculation under combat conditions. But the report didn't mention the silence before the shot, or the heartbeat between doubt and decision, or the promise whispered to a father long gone. Those things never make it into paperwork. They live only in memory and in the stillness that follows. That night she sat alone again on the roof of the outpost, same place she'd sat before the mission. The mountains were quiet now. She took the coin from her pocket, turned it over in her fingers, the words worn but clear. Actions, not words. Below her the team celebrated. Laughter, relief, exhaustion. But she stayed above, where the wind could speak for her. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like a ghost. She felt like her father's daughter and her own person. She closed her eyes, whispering into the cold. Excellence doesn't announce itself, but it's heard when it has to be. The mountains answered with silence. And somewhere in that silence, a legend exhaled. Morning came late to the Corangle. The sun climbed slow over ridges that still smelled of cordite and stone. The mission was over, but Thea Reigns wasn't done fighting. Victories in this valley never felt clean. You didn't cheer here. You just survived and wondered why you did. Down at Combat Outpost Keating, the men moved differently around her now. Where suspicion had lived, there was space, something like respect but edged with disbelief. They didn't know how to look at her. Yesterday she'd been the unknown attachment. Now she was the one who'd rewritten every metric they trusted. Williams dropped a mug of burnt coffee beside her gear. He didn't speak at first, just sat on the sandbag wall beside her and stared out at the same ridgeline. She'd turned into legend. Never thought I'd see someone make a shot like that outside a storybook, he said finally. She didn't answer. He waited, then added, You okay? Thea kept her eyes on the horizon. People keep asking me that, she said softly, like the rifle fired itself. Williams nodded, understanding the space between her words. Killing, even righteous killing, always costs something. He'd seen operators go home whole in body, fractured in spirit. He didn't press. Behind them, the sound of helicopters grew louder. 2 Black Hawks circling in, bringing in command elements and extraction teams. Somewhere in that dust, Storm waited the questions she couldn't avoid anymore. By noon, a convoy rolled in carrying Lieutenant Commander Brooks and a handful of brass from Task Force Green. Thea stood at parade rest near the LZ, helmet off, hair tied back, face streaked with dust. Brooks stopped in front of her, studying her the way a man studies something that shouldn't exist but does. "Petty Officer Reigns," he said, using her real name now, not the alias on her roster. "You've caused quite a commotion." She said nothing. He motioned for her to walk with him toward the perimeter wall. "Command wants a full report. They're already calling it the cleanest overwatch in recent memory. Manser's compound is gone, no collateral, no wounded." He paused. "I should be congratulating you, but you don't look like someone who wants a medal." "I don't," she replied. "Medals are announcements." Brooks half smiled. "Your father said something like that once." Her throat tightened. "You knew him." "I trained under him at Coronado," Brooks said quietly. "He tore me apart more than once on the range. He used to tell us, a shot isn't fired when you pull the trigger. It's fired the moment you decide you have no choice." I never forgot that. The wind caught her hair. She wanted to answer but couldn't find words that wouldn't break. Instead, she handed him the firing log from the operation. Handwritten calculations, wind calls, corrections. He scanned the notes, then looked back at her. "You know this data will end up in the sniper school curriculum." "Then maybe it'll save someone else's son," she said. Brooks nodded once. "Get some rest, Reigns, you've earned it." But rest never came easy. That night, as the outpost powered down to generator hum, Thea sat alone again on the roof, same spot, same wind. Only this time, she wasn't invisible. Voices below carried her name like a rumor turning into a legend. "Reigns," they whispered. Some with respect, some with envy, some with the unease men feel when a myth wears a woman's face. She closed her eyes. Every compliment sounded like distance. Every mention of her father felt like theft. The operation had proven her skill, but it had also stripped her quiet away. She missed anonymity the way others missed sleep. The coin lay in her palm. Actions, not words. Tonight those words felt heavier, because now everyone else was speaking for her. 3 weeks later, she was back at Bagram. The war kept moving, but command didn't forget what she'd done. A citation was drafted, recommendations made, meetings scheduled. The kind of bureaucratic storm her father had always warned her about. She stood before a room of officers as they read the official language: exceptional marksmanship under hostile fire, distinguished conduct, courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Each phrase made her skin crawl. She remembered the recoil, the silence after impact, the smell of burnt powder. There was no glory there, only necessity. After the briefing, Brooks approached her again. "NSWC wants you back stateside," he said. "Sniper school, instructor track." She frowned. "I'm not a teacher." He shrugged. "Neither was your father until he realized his calm could save lives. They want you because you don't grandstand, because you make it look like what it really is: math, patience, conscience." Thea stared at the floor. "And because it looks good on paper, having a woman teach Tier 1 marksmen." Brooks met her eyes. "Maybe, but it'll look even better when you outshoot them all." He left her with that and walked away. Home wasn't home anymore. When she landed at Coronado, the air smelled of ocean and jet fuel, the same blend she'd grown up around, but it felt smaller somehow. The sniper school had changed since her father's era. Newer ranges, smarter tech, same ghosts. His picture still hung in the hallway of honor, black and white, unsmiling, eyes that could read wind just by looking at you. Her chest tightened every time she passed it. She wanted to cover it with a cloth, to force the students to see her without seeing him. The first class she taught was a mix of SEALs, Marines, and Rangers, men who'd heard the story, men who wanted to see if the myth was real. Among them was Chief Martinez, the same man who doubted her before Cunnar. He approached her after the morning brief, helmet under his arm. "Guess I'm your student now," he said, a wry smile tugging his mouth. She raised an eyebrow. "That a problem?" He shook his head. "No, ma'am. I figured if I'm gonna learn patience, might as well learn from someone who made me eat my own words." For the first time in months, she smiled, small, genuine. "Then let's start with silence. It's the hardest distance to measure." Days turned into weeks. Teaching changed her. The field range became her sanctuary, the only place where noise had purpose. She'd walk behind each student, watching their breathing, their hesitation, their ego. Correcting them not with anger, but with stillness. "Don't force the shot," she'd say. "You don't control the bullet, you control the moment before it leaves." The words weren't hers, they were his. But they sounded different now, softer, feminine, reborn. Sometimes at dusk, she'd stay after the students left, firing one cold-bore shot toward the steel plate at 1,000 meters. The echo always came back late, as if the valley itself was thinking before it spoke. Each ring reminded her that distance could be conquered, but loss couldn't. Her story spread quietly through naval special warfare. Not the way war stories usually spread, loud, embellished, cracked open over beer. This one moved like a whisper through training halls and after-action debriefs. They called her the daughter who didn't need the name, the operator who let her rifle introduce her before she ever spoke. And every time she heard that, she felt both pride and grief. Because silence had always been her armor, and now everyone wanted to wear it. Months later, she stood before the sniper school's memorial wall, a shadow box newly mounted beneath her father's plaque. Inside it sat the coin, the one he'd carried through 3 wars, the one she'd carried into Cunnar. Beneath it, a simple inscription. "Excellence speaks in whispers until the moment demands a roar." Her own words, approved quietly by command. She touched the glass once, feeling the chill of it against her fingertips. Outside, the Pacific wind carried salt and distance. Williams found her there, hands in pockets. "You ever think about going back?" he asked. She considered it. "The war doesn't stop," she said, "but maybe the noise can." He nodded, then gestured to the wall. "He'd be proud, you know." She smiled faintly. "Maybe, but he'd probably tell me my wind calls were still 1/2 a mil off." Williams laughed. "Then I guess you'll keep teaching until they're perfect." She looked back at the ocean. "Perfection's not the point," she said quietly. "Patience is." That night, long after the base lights dimmed, Thea sat alone on the range bleachers, rifle across her knees. The moon hung low, silvering the targets in the distance. For the first time in years, she wasn't haunted by the echo of a shot. She closed her eyes and listened, to the waves, the wind, the memory of a voice she still missed. Let the rifle speak. It already had. And now it was finally quiet. They said teaching was easier than war. They were wrong. War was chaos outside you. Teaching was chaos inside. Thea Reigns stood on the firing line at dawn, wind tugging her hair, the Pacific air sharp with salt and memory. 15 students lay prone across the range, rifles resting on bipods, scopes catching the first light of morning. Each heartbeat, each exhale, each click of a bolt carried a piece of who she used to be. "Wind 13 left, quarter value," she said, voice calm through the headset. "Trust the call, not your pride." Cracks rolled down the line like a slow wave. Steel targets rang at staggered distances, some clean, some wide. Chief Martinez, now in his second month of instruction, looked up from his scope and grinned. Half my class still thinks the bullet listens to them. Thea smiled faintly. The bullet listens to no one. It just obeys physics and punishes ego. She said it the way her father once had, except now the words carried her own quiet authority. When the range went cold, students filed out to clean weapons. Thea stayed behind, walking between empty mats, scanning the brass on the ground, tiny relics of imperfection. Every casing told a story. Too much tension, too little breath, the small failures that built better shooters. Behind her, someone cleared their throat. "Ma'am." She turned. A young recruit stood there, barely mid-20s, lean, sunburnt, eyes too bright for what they'd seen. His name patch read Keller. "I didn't mean to interrupt," he said quickly. "Just wanted to thank you for the lecture yesterday about hesitation." Thea tilted her head. "Hesitation." He nodded, clutching his notebook like it was armor. "You said hesitation isn't weakness, it's awareness. Most instructors tell us to kill our hesitation." She studied him. "You remember everything too literally," she said. "Hesitation's only useful if it teaches you why you hesitated." He hesitated again, then blurted, "Ma'am, were you the one from Cunnar?" The question hit harder than it should have. She'd spent months trying to live beyond that label. Now it followed her like a shadow she couldn't shed. She didn't confirm or deny. Instead, she asked, "What does it matter if I was?" He swallowed. "Because my brother died out there, 2010, same valley, different fight, just feels strange learning from someone who walked the same dirt." Her chest tightened. "What was his name?" "Corporal Ben Keller, Marines." She nodded once. "Then you're already carrying his lesson. You don't need mine." He looked at her for a long moment, something vulnerable flickering behind the soldier mask. "Maybe, but I'd like to learn how you carried yours." She didn't answer, just turned back toward the sea and said quietly, "Meet me here at 400 tomorrow. We'll start before the wind wakes up." The next morning before dawn, he was there, rifle slung, eyes raw from lack of sleep. She handed him a data book and pointed toward the farthest target. 1,100 meters, she said, "cold bore, one shot." He exhaled nervously. "Wind's dead." "Wind's never dead," she said. "It's just waiting to test you." He adjusted, lined up, squeezed the trigger. Crack! The shot went wide, half a meter off steel. He cursed under his breath. "Why?" she asked calmly. "Bad elevation." "No, you didn't believe the stillness." He frowned, confused. She lowered herself beside him, eyes tracing the barely visible mirage lines drifting across the valley. "See that shimmer? That's movement. Even silence moves. You have to feel it before you see it. My father called it reading the quiet." Keller nodded slowly. "Your father taught you." She hesitated. "He taught me patience. The rifle taught me honesty." He smiled slightly. "And war taught you pain." She looked at him then, really looked. The same restless hunger she'd carried at his age burned in his eyes. She saw herself before loss, before legacy, before learning how much silence could hurt. "War doesn't teach," she said softly. "It erases until you remember what mattered." They stayed there until sunrise, shooting, adjusting, missing, learning. Each round found a little more truth than the last. By the end, Keller hit the steel. The echo rang long and clean across the valley. He smiled like a boy again. She let him have that moment. Weeks passed. Keller improved fast, too fast. The other instructors joked he had Reigns math in his blood. Thea deflected every compliment. She didn't want disciples. She wanted thinkers. But one afternoon during a live-fire evaluation, Keller's eagerness turned reckless. He took a shot before confirming wind. Missed. Then corrected too fast, chasing his error. Another miss. A dangerous habit. She called a ceasefire. Walked over. Keller, what's your hurry? He straightened, defensive. Just trying to trust instinct, ma'am. Instinct without awareness is gambling, she said. And the people you protect don't pay with chips. They pay with blood. He stiffened. I just thought. She cut him off. That thinking stops when ego starts. Don't ever confuse confidence with clarity. He looked away, shame flickering through his expression. She softened her tone. You're not here to prove you can shoot. You're here to learn when not to. That's what separates a marksman from a sniper. He nodded, jaw tight. Yes, ma'am. But as she walked away, she felt a pang of guilt. Her father had used that same tone on her once, sharp, surgical, meant to protect but still cutting deep. She promised herself she wouldn't teach through fear. And yet here she was. That night she couldn't sleep. The barracks were quiet, wind rustling through open vents, faint hum of the Pacific beyond the wire. She sat at her desk, the old coin resting beside an open notebook. For months she'd written nothing in it. Tonight she began again, not equations or ballistics, but words she wished someone had told her years ago. Every shot begins long before the trigger. It starts in what you refuse to ignore. You can't master distance until you forgive the things you missed. Precision isn't about control, it's about surrender. She stared at those lines until the ink bled slightly from her pen pressure. Somewhere down the hallway, laughter broke out, young operators unwinding after another brutal day. Life continued. War waited. And she sat in the middle, suspended between both. 2 days later, Keller found her on the range again. Ma'am, about the other day. She stopped him with a raised hand. You were right to push yourself, just wrong about when. That's fixable. He exhaled in relief. I thought you were going to drop me from the course. Not yet, she said with a half smile. But if you stop questioning yourself entirely, I will. He laughed nervously. That seems backwards. She tilted her head. Doubt keeps you honest, arrogance gets you dead. He nodded, filing the words away. Then unexpectedly he asked, do you ever miss it, the field? The question pulled at her like undertow. She wanted to say no, to claim peace, to sound evolved. But she couldn't lie. Sometimes, she said, but only the part where everything slows down, where the noise outside you finally matches the quiet inside. Keller looked at her like he understood too well. Then maybe you're still out there, he said softly, just in a different fight. She didn't answer. Sometimes silence was the only way to agree. Months later, graduation day arrived. 15 students stood in a straight line, rifles cleaned, uniforms pressed. The sea wind fluttered the flag above them. Thea walked down the row, handing each a certificate, a handshake, and a look that said you're responsible now. When she reached Keller, he held her gaze. Thank you, ma'am, for everything. She nodded. You earned it, now earn it again every day. He smiled, just like your father taught you. She hesitated, then said quietly no, like he hoped I'd remember. As the ceremony ended, she turned back toward the range, the steel plates gleaming under the noon sun. Each one carried a memory, a mistake, a lesson. Each one sounded like her father's voice, echoing across time. Let the rifle speak. It had spoken through her. Now it would speak through them. That night, she stood alone at the shoreline behind the base. Waves crashed, gulls wheeled, sky fading from blue to ember. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the coin, smooth, weighty, familiar. For the first time, she didn't clutch it for strength. She just held it lightly, like a memory finally allowed to rest. I'm still learning, Dad, she whispered, still figuring out what silence means. A breeze lifted, cool and steady, the kind that carried answers without words. And for once, she didn't need to hear them. She smiled, slipped the coin back into her pocket, and walked toward the darkening range. Because tomorrow the next class would arrive, full of questions, fear, pride, and potential. And someone had to teach them how to listen to the quiet before the shot. The letter came without ceremony. No phone call, no warning, just a plain manila envelope slipped under her door before dawn. Thea Reigns stared at it for nearly an hour before opening it. The return code said NSWC, immediate recall authorization. Her name, her clearance level, one phrase in bold print. Reactivation, Shadow Viper. She read it twice, then a third time, hoping the words might change. They didn't. It had been 18 months since she'd left Afghanistan. 18 months since she'd traded battlefields for classrooms, chaos for chalk dust, the rifle's thunder for the quiet patience of teaching. She thought she was done being a ghost. But ghosts never retire. They're only ever called back. She met Lieutenant Commander Brooks in a small conference room overlooking the Coronado Pier. The same man who had once defended her in front of doubters, older now, his face lined, eyes dimmed by too many funerals. "Thea," he said as she entered, "I wish this wasn't happening." "Then tell me it isn't," she replied. He slid a file across the table. "Wish I could, but the world doesn't stop because we get tired." Inside were satellite photos, desert terrain, mountains, a river bend, and a red circle marking a compound deep inside the Horn of Africa. Target name, Asim Darzi. Known arms trafficker, connected to insurgent cells operating across 3 borders. And somewhere in those notes, a word that made her pulse still, sniper activity confirmed. Brooks leaned forward. 3 of our teams tried to take him out. All failed. Each one hit before they got close. Whoever's up there isn't guessing, they're reading wind like scripture. She didn't look up. "You're saying there's another one like me." "I'm saying there's someone who might have learned from the same source." Her eyes lifted sharp. "That's not possible." He hesitated. "You sure about that?" The room went cold. They flew out under the radar 2 days later. No patches, no rank, no identifiers. Just a blacked-out C-17, cutting through clouds toward a continent she'd only ever seen in classified reports. Williams was back, pulled from another unit to spot for her. When he saw her at the airfield, he grinned. "Guess the teacher's going back to school." She smirked despite herself. "You ever notice how bad news always starts with a flight manifest?" He laughed softly. "You wouldn't be here if they didn't need the impossible done." "I'm here because someone else made the same mistake I did, letting silence make the call." He didn't press, he never did. They flew mostly in silence. Hours stretched like miles. Thea stared out at the endless blue-black horizon and tried to quiet the part of her that still wanted to believe she escaped this life. But the truth was simpler. She belonged where stillness met danger. That was her battlefield. The operation was called Shadow Viper because of what they didn't know. The target moved like a myth, surrounded by silence and bodies. Intel said he used a counter-sniper named Amin Rahel, a former soldier trained by unknown sources, deadly beyond range charts. Unknown sources. The phrase gnawed at her. Her father's manuals had been leaked before, fragments translated, corrupted, traded between allies and enemies. But this sniper's precision, his timing, it wasn't just skill, it was language. Her language. They set up base in an abandoned outpost near the Ethiopian border. The landscape felt like Mars, red earth, heat shimmer, air that burned the lungs. Thea unpacked her Mk-13 with the same ritual calm she always did, but her hands shook slightly on the bolt. Brooks briefed the team. Primary objective, locate and eliminate Darzi. Secondary, identify his overwatch. We're on borrowed time. No drones, no air cover. Radio silence once we cross the ridge. Thea caught her reflection in the rifle's scope glass, older now, eyes colder. She didn't look like the legend they whispered about. She just looked tired. Williams noticed, "You ever regret teaching them everything?" She didn't answer right away. Regret isn't the right word. It's more like wondering if I should have kept one secret. He nodded. "If this guy really learned from your father's notes." She cut in. "Then I'm not just fighting him. I'm fighting the echoes of my own bloodline." Night fell like a curtain of dust. The operation began at 100. Thea and Williams moved through the canyon, low, deliberate, each step synchronized to breath. The moonlight painted the rock walls silver, turning shadows into mirrors. At 1,400 meters from the target compound, they found the high ground, a ridge scarred by erosion, overlooking the valley below. Through the scope she saw heat signatures, patrols, sentries, and one figure on the upper ridge, lying perfectly still. "Got him," Williams whispered. "Position matches the reports. He's patient, waiting." She adjusted her focus, heart slowing. The way he held the rifle. The angle of his elbow. The breathing cadence. It was textbook, her textbook. Her father's technique, her lineage weaponized against her. "Wind 1.2 right," Williams said softly. She didn't respond. She was listening not to him but to memory. Her father's voice. "Someone out there will learn what you know. What matters is who learns it first." She blinked, cleared her mind, and whispered, "He's good, real good." Williams frowned. "You can take him." She shook her head. "Not yet. He's waiting for something. You don't shoot patience. You outlast it." Hours crawled by. The desert heat died, replaced by a wind that howled through the ravines. Time blurred, sweat dried into salt, muscles locked in stillness. Thea's cheek pressed into the rifle stock until she could feel her pulse through the metal. Then through the scope, movement. The sniper shifted. Only a fraction, but enough. "Got him," she whispered. "Range, 1180. Adjust elevation 0.9 mils down." Williams adjusted his scope. "Ready." Thea's finger found the trigger. Her breath slowed. Her heartbeat aligned with the earth. For one suspended moment, the world vanished. She fired. The sound cracked through the canyon, sharp, clean, final. But the shot never landed. A puff of dust erupted 2 meters short. "Miss." "Jesus," Williams breathed. He moved right before impact, he knew. Thea chambered another round, scanning. But the opposing sniper was gone, melted into the terrain like smoke. Her chest tightened. He was reading me. Williams looked confused. "Reading you." She exhaled slowly. "Not my wind, my rhythm. My father taught that once. How to anticipate heartbeat packing through optic vibration." He stared at her. "Then he's not just using your father's notes." She nodded grimly. "He learned from someone who trained with him." By dawn, they'd withdrawn to a fallback position. Thea sat against a boulder, helmet off, face streaked with exhaustion and dust. Williams was silent, watching her. "This isn't a mission anymore," she said quietly. "It's a conversation between ghosts." He frowned. "Then what's he saying?" She met his gaze. "He's saying he remembers my father, maybe even owed him something. But out here, debts are settled with bullets." Brooks came over the radio, static cutting through the channel. "Ghost One, what's your status?" She keyed the mic. "Miss the counter sniper. He's good, predictive good. We're adjusting." "Copy that. The op's still live. We move tonight. Darcy doesn't walk out of that compound again." She switched the comms off and looked at the horizon. The heat shimmered like invisible fire. Williams broke the silence. "You'll get him tomorrow." She shook her head. "Maybe, but this one feels personal." That night she cleaned her rifle again. Every motion deliberate, slow. The smell of oil filled the tent, the same scent her childhood carried. She placed the old coin on the table beside the bolt assembly. Her father's coin. His creed. Actions, not words. She whispered, "You left me a language, Dad. Someone else learned how to speak it louder." For the first time in years, she felt doubt, the kind that didn't weaken but warned. She wasn't afraid of dying. She was afraid of becoming a ghost in someone else's story. She reassembled the rifle, locked the bolt forward, and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would decide which legend survived. The desert doesn't forgive noise. It listens, waits, and buries every echo in dust. By dawn, Thea Reigns had already been awake for hours. The horizon bled gold over red sand. Heat shimmered early, a sign of what the day intended. She sat cross-legged outside her tent, polishing the scope lens of her Mk13. The coin rested beside her, its engraving worn smooth. She turned it once between her fingers, the words catching light. Actions, not words. Then she set it aside. Today, action would have to speak for everything she couldn't. Williams approached quietly, helmet clipped to his vest, eyes cautious. "You didn't sleep," he said. She smirked faintly. "Did you expect me to?" He crouched beside her. "Brooks wants you at the command tent. We're moving before the next sandstorm hits." "Darcy." "He's still inside the compound. Intel says he's prepping a convoy, probably plans to move before dusk." She nodded, reassembling the rifle, each click like punctuation to a decision she'd already made. "Let's finish this," she said. Inside the command tent, the air was thick with static and dust. Maps littered the table, radios whispered half-broken signals. Brooks stood over the layout, his expression carved from stone. "Thea," he said without looking up, "you and Williams will reoccupy the western ridge. That's where the shot came from yesterday." She frowned. "You think he's still there?" Brooks met her gaze. "I think he wants you to come back, which means he'll be waiting." Williams stiffened. "You're using her as bait." Brooks didn't flinch. "We're using her as balance. You don't beat a ghost by hiding from it." Thea understood. Sometimes the only way out was through. She nodded. "When do we move?" 0500. You'll have one drone overhead, low altitude. No strikes, just eyes." "Copy." As she turned to leave, Brooks stopped her. "You don't have to prove anything anymore, Thea." She looked over her shoulder, eyes steady. "I'm not proving anything. I'm correcting something." They left before sunrise. The desert was colder than memory. A kind of silence that didn't comfort, just reminded you were alone. Each step crunched through salt-crusted sand. The world was colorless except for their breath fogging in front of them. Williams kept pace behind her, scanning through binoculars. He broke the silence first. "You ever think maybe he's not out there for the same reason we are?" She glanced back, meaning maybe he's not hunting for money or ideology. Maybe he's hunting you. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Because deep down, she'd already felt it, the unmistakable tension of recognition. Every sniper develops a rhythm, a fingerprint in motion and decision. Yesterday's miss hadn't been luck, it had been dialogue. And she could still feel the question that Miss had asked. "Do you know me?" At 7:30 hours, they reached the ridge. A jagged spine of rock rising above the valley floor, littered with dried grass and shattered shale. They crawled the last 50 meters, settling into a depression that offered cover from the east wind. Thea set up her bipod, adjusted the optic, and scanned the compound below. Darcy's men moved lazily, unaware that every motion was already numbered. Trucks idled near the gate, heat waves bending their outlines. Williams checked bearings. Distance 1250, same as last time, visibility good. Thea nodded. "Watch for glint, he'll reveal himself before the shot." Hours passed. The sun rose higher. The air turned into glass. And then, the faintest flicker on a distant ridge to the north. Williams caught it too, there 10 o'clock high, reflection off glass. She locked in. Through the scope, the world tunneled into stillness. Her breath vanished. There he was prone, patient, the rifle angled just slightly left of center. And this time she could see his face. Not clearly, just enough to know he wasn't local. Pale skin weathered, eyes hidden behind dark optics. But the way he moved the bolt, the smoothness of it, it felt like muscle memory she'd seen before. She whispered, "He's American." Williams blinked, "Say again." "He's using Navy kit. Custom stock, same wind correction mods my father designed. That's not coincidence." Williams swore softly, "So who the hell trained him?" She didn't answer, her throat felt tight. Then through her earpiece static broke. A voice, faint, deliberate, patched directly into their encrypted frequency. "You shouldn't have come back, Ghost." Thea froze. Williams looked at her, alarmed. "You hearing that?" She nodded slowly. "He's on our channel." The voice came again, calm, almost kind. "Your father taught me everything I know, before you were even in uniform. He said patience was the soul of a rifleman, but he forgot to tell me what to do when the soul runs out." Her stomach dropped. That voice, not familiar but intimate, the tone of someone who'd once shared the same range, the same silence. "Identify yourself," she said quietly. "Names are noise, you already know mine. The journals he left weren't just yours, I found them first." Her mind raced, the journal, the one she'd thought destroyed. She'd taken her father's originals, but copies. Maybe someone had digitized them years ago, archived them for study. He continued. "He was right about one thing, though. Excellence doesn't announce itself. It just waits. So I waited for you." Williams whispered, "We need to move." She stayed still. Because she knew if she shifted, he'd read it. He'd see the intent through the scope before the motion even began. So she spoke instead. "What do you want?" "What he owed me, recognition. He called me a student, but I was more than that. I was his experiment, his failure." Something inside her cracked open. Her father's past, so clean in her memory, suddenly felt incomplete. There had been other students, other ghosts. "He tested everything on me," the voice said. "Distance, deprivation, patience. And when I broke, he buried me, wrote me out of the doctrine. I was the lesson he didn't want anyone to learn." The desert wind rose, carrying static through the channel. Thea's pulse thudded in her ears. "Then you're not here for Darcy." "Darcy, just a paycheck. You're the closure." And then silence. Williams swore under his breath. He cut comms. Thea exhaled slowly. "No, he's moving." She scanned nothing. The ridge where he'd lain was empty. A mirage swallowed the shape. Then a round cracked past her head, so close it split the sand a foot to her right. Williams ducked, shouting, "Contact! Direction North Ridge, 1,200 meters." Thea rolled behind cover, chambered around, exhaled once. She peeked, caught the faint shimmer of heat where he'd repositioned. He was faster than she expected. "Mirage distortions killing the view," Williams hissed. "Then we don't see him," she said. "We feel him." She closed her eyes briefly, recalling her father's words. "Wind isn't noise, it's a voice. Listen to where it changes pitch." She opened them again, scanning not for shape, but for movement of air, of dust, of silence bending. And there, a ripple that didn't belong. "Got you," she whispered. She dialed correction, adjusted for range, felt her pulse slow until the rifle's metal matched her heartbeat. 2.1 right, 3 high, she murmured. Williams spotted, confirmed. She fired. The shot cracked through the canyon, echoing like a thunderclap swallowed by heat. Through the scope she saw the man jerk back, roll, vanish behind stone. "Impact," Williams called. But Thea didn't celebrate. She stayed locked in, scanning. Then a voice again, faint but steady. Almost perfect, Ghost, he'd be proud. Her chest went cold. But you forgot one thing, patience cuts both ways. A flash from the right ridge, she moved instinctively, pulling Williams down. A round sliced through the air where her head had been. Two shooters, she gasped. Williams's eyes went wide. He's got a spotter. No, not a spotter, another sniper. No, she said, realization dawning. A student. The man hadn't come alone. He'd brought someone learning exactly what she'd once learned, and together they mirrored her old rhythm, her old tactics, her father's old patterns. Every breath she took, they anticipated. Every second of stillness, they matched. This wasn't combat. It was reflection. A duel against herself, multiplied. Williams grabbed the radio. We need air support. She stopped him. No, that's what he wants. Movement gives him eyes. So what do we do? Thea stared through the scope again, eyes narrowing. We outweight him. She shifted slightly left, found a better line of sight, one that cut across both probable firing positions. Then she settled her cheek into the stock and whispered, he learned from my father, but he forgot who my father raised. And as the sun dropped behind the horizon, turning the desert blood-red, Thea Reigns waited. Not as prey. As answer. The night fell like a held breath. No moon, no wind. Just a silence so thick it pressed against the eardrums, the kind of quiet that makes even thoughts sound too loud. Thea Reigns lay prone behind her rifle, body half buried in dust. Her world had narrowed to a single circle of glass, her scope. Through it, the valley below flickered with dying heat, and the soft glint of metal under starlight. Williams lay beside her, barely moving. His voice came out as a whisper, dry and tight. He's still out there. I know, she said softly, and he knows we are. How long you think he'll wait? As long as it takes. Because that's what patience meant in this kind of war, not virtue, but endurance. A willingness to die slower than the other person. Hours passed. Nothing. The desert began to change colors, from black to gray to that ghost blue hue that lives only between midnight and dawn. Cold crept in, numbing her fingers, dulling the ache in her shoulders. She counted her breaths, her pulse, the rhythm of the earth. 30 seconds per scan. 60 for a full rotation. Every minute the same, until time stopped meaning anything. And then finally, movement. A shimmer along the far ridge, faint, deliberate. She saw it before Williams did. Got him, she whispered. He adjusted his spotting scope. Range 1290, same as before. No higher angle, he's relocated north crest. He's watching for reflection. She dialed corrections, 1 mil left, half down. But something felt off. He wasn't facing her position. He was facing east. Not a sniper's mistake. A message. He's not targeting us, she murmured. He's showing me something. Williams frowned. Showing you what? Before she could answer, the radio crackled softly. The same voice as before, quiet, level, too calm for a battlefield. You're learning, he'd be proud. He used to say the hardest part isn't pulling the trigger, it's deciding when not to. Thea's heart sank. Every time he spoke, it felt less like an enemy, more like a mirror. She clicked her mic once, a reply without sound. He spoke again. He told me once that greatness doesn't announce itself, but he never told me what to do when no one listens at all. Her mind spun back to a time she didn't want to remember, her father's last days, when visitors came and went, students, instructors, admirers. She'd been there for all of them except one. A man she hadn't recognized at the time. Younger, intense, a scar along his jaw. He'd left a folder on the table marked Prototype Ballistic Study, Field Application. She remembered the way her father's eyes had darkened when he saw it. and how, after the man left, he'd burned the papers in the sink. She whispered, "Oh God, it's him." Williams looked over. "Who?" "Captain Eli Ward," she said, the name tasting like ash. "He trained with my father before Iraq. He vanished from the program after a psych eval." Williams blinked. "He's the ghost." She nodded slowly. "The one my father erased." "Now you remember," the voice said through her headset, calm as confession. "I told him I could make perfection repeatable. He told me patience couldn't be taught. He was wrong. I taught myself what he wouldn't." Her pulse hammered. "You turned his lessons into algorithms. You turned philosophy into targets." "I made what he started complete." "No," she whispered, "you corrupted it." "Same thing, different conscience." Williams started to move, but she raised a hand. "He's baiting, stay still." He froze, whispering, "So what now?" Thea looked through the scope again. "Now we talk." She keyed the mic. "You don't want Darcy. You never did." "Darcy's noise, you're the point." "Why?" "Because you inherited what he wouldn't give me. His approval, his name, his silence." She swallowed hard. "He didn't give me anything. I had to earn it." "Exactly." A pause, then almost gently. "Do you know what he said when I asked him about you? He said you were born already calm. That scared him." Thea exhaled slowly, remembering that night before her father's death, his hand on hers. "The moment you need to tell them who you are is the moment you've already lost." She hadn't realized what that meant until now. Her father wasn't talking about pride. He was warning her about this. About someone who'd once needed to be recognized and built his identity out of that need. She whispered into the mic, "You think killing me fixes that?" "No, killing you ends the noise. The myth ends where it began." Then silence. And she knew what came next. The world slowed. A faint glint blinked on the far ridge, the reflection of a scope turning, centering. "He had her." Williams hissed, "He's locking." "Don't move," she said. She could feel the rifle across from her, the man behind it, the breath timing, the trigger prep, the calculation of distance. It was the same rhythm her father had taught both of them. Only one of them would finish the lesson. "Williams," she said quietly, "shift right 10 meters on my mark, throw dust, nothing else." He hesitated. "That's suicide." "Trust me." He looked at her, then nodded. "You've got 10 seconds of distraction, that's all." "That's all I need." He crawled to the right, slow as the desert allowed. Thea adjusted her position by inches, lowering her rifle half an inch, aligning with a sliver of reflective rock. She wanted him to see her glint again, to think she hadn't learned. 10 seconds. Williams's hand dug into sand. He waited. "Now," she whispered. He flung a handful of dust upward. The particles caught starlight, a brief shimmer in the dark. A shot cracked from the ridge. The bullet sliced through air, missing Williams by less than a meter. He dropped flat. But in that instant, Thea saw the muzzle flash. She saw him. She fired. The recoil slammed into her shoulder, clean, powerful, final. Through the scope, she saw the man jerk back once, twice, then fall, motionless, swallowed by the rock. Williams panted beside her. Impact. She didn't answer. She was still staring. They approached the ridge at dawn. Each step up the slope felt heavier than the last. When she reached the crest, she saw him lying half-propped against a rock, rifle beside him, eyes open to the sky. Blood spread dark through the sand. He was older than she remembered. Gaunt, sunburned, but the jaw scar was still there, a relic of the man her father had once mentored. As she knelt beside him, his lips moved. "You found me." She didn't speak. "He told me once that the greatest shot is mercy. You think he meant this?" Her throat tightened. He meant knowing when to stop pulling the trigger. He smiled faintly. Guess neither of us learned that. She watched as his breathing slowed, his eyes still fixed on the endless sky. Tell him I finished the equation. Then his head fell sideways, eyes still open, as if still watching the horizon for a wind that would never change. Thea closed his eyes with her gloved hand. For a moment she saw not an enemy, but another version of her father's legacy, warped by loneliness, by hunger for meaning. Williams came up behind her quiet. You okay? She exhaled slowly. No one's okay out here. We just end quieter than we started. He nodded, command, asking for confirmation. She looked down at the rifle beside the body. Same model as hers, same modifications, even the same hand-marked adjustments on the scope. She picked it up, turned it once in her hands, then said into the mic, target neutralized. But it wasn't just a man. It was everything that happens when we forget why we aim at all. They buried him in the same sand he tried to disappear into. No markers, no name, just silence. Thea left one thing behind, her father's coin, pressed into the earth beside the rifle he'd built. She whispered, for what he taught both of us. Williams watched, respectful, saying nothing. When she stood, the sun had begun to rise, cutting the desert into bands of gold and blood. She turned toward him. It's over. He studied her face. You sure? She gave a small, tired smile. No, but maybe the echo finally stopped. They walked back down the ridge in silence, two figures against a landscape that never cared who lived or died on it. That night back at base, she sat alone in her tent, hands trembling for the first time in years. Not from fear, from release. The kind that comes only when a story finishes itself. She reached into her pocket, expecting to find the coin, then remembered she'd left it behind. And for once that felt right. She picked up her notebook instead. Opened to a blank page. Patience is not waiting, it's understanding why you still do. She closed it softly. Outside, the desert wind shifted, carrying dust, memory, and the faint echo of a man's voice she would always hear somewhere deep in her chest. Let the rifle speak. Tonight it finally had. And she hoped it would never need to again. Home didn't feel like home. It rarely does when the war has already built a room inside you. Thea Reigns stepped off the transport plane at Coronado under a slate blue sky. No cheering, no cameras, just the hiss of brakes and the smell of ocean wind. The Pacific rolled out in front of her like a mirror that refused to show a reflection. Williams met her at the tarmac. He looked the same, exhausted, alert, quietly decent. Command debrief at 1600, he said. You sure you want to talk to them today? She adjusted the duffel on her shoulder. If I don't do it now, I'll never do it. He hesitated, then added, they'll ask what happened out there. I'll tell them, she said, a sniper died. She didn't add that a part of her had died with him. The briefing room was small, sterile, too bright. Two admirals, one psychologist, and Brooks sat behind a table lined with paper cups. They called it a debrief. It felt more like confession. Brooks started softly. Your actions concluded Operation Shadow Viper. Darcy confirmed KIA, but there's concern over the second shooter. No record, no DNA match. You care to elaborate? Thea stared at the folder in front of her. Her voice stayed even. He was one of us, a man trained by my father years ago. His name was Captain Eli Ward. Silence. The Admiral scribbled something she didn't bother to read. And you're certain he's deceased? Yes. She paused, but what he believed is. The psychologist leaned forward, meaning. Thea folded her hands. He thought perfection could replace conscience. That's what happens when you teach skill without soul. Brooks met her eyes. You did what you had to. She nodded once, so did he. The Admiral closed the folder. "You're cleared for rest leave. We'll handle the reports." She stood, saluted, turned to go. No medals, no applause, just quiet. Exactly how she wanted it. Days bled together. Morning jogs along the beach. Coffee that tasted like metal. Sleep that came in fragments. She visited the sniper school once, standing at the fence line while a new class trained under Chief Martinez. His voice carried across the wind. "Breathe first, think second, shoot last." Her father's words. Her words now, too. Keller spotted her from downrange and raised a hand. She waved back, half smile, half ghost. Then she turned and walked toward the cliffs, where the sea hit rock like gunfire softened by time. At night she wrote. Not reports, not equations. Letters unsent, unaddressed. "You were right, Dad. Patience isn't about waiting for the shot. It's about knowing when to stop aiming. He found me, the man you erased, but I didn't kill him because he hated you. I killed him because he became what silence can do to a person. Maybe legacy is just noise we learn to live with." She never signed them. Some things didn't need names. Weeks later, Brooks found her on the range at dusk. No students this time, just her, the rifle, and the sound of waves hitting sand. He stood a few yards behind. "Command offered you instructor lead, full program oversight. You'd be taking your father's old post." She chambered around but didn't look up. "You think that's a promotion?" He shrugged. "I think it's a circle closing." She lined up the shot, exhaled, and fired. The round hit steel at 1,000 meters, dead center. The echo rolled back slow and steady. She lowered the rifle. "Circles don't close, Commander. They just overlap until you stop noticing the gap." He smiled faintly, still philosophical. "Still tired," she corrected. He hesitated. "For what it's worth, the teams talk about you like a legend now." She gave him a small look. "Legends are just stories told by people who weren't there." Brooks nodded. "Then maybe we need stories like that." He left her with the sea and the silence. Later that night, she unlocked her father's old locker at the school armory, metal rusted, tag barely legible. MSTCF-REIGNS. Inside, his field notes. Yellowed pages, faded ink, familiar handwriting. At the back, she found a sealed envelope she'd never seen. Her name written across it in his hand. "Thea." Her breath caught. She opened it slowly. "If you're reading this, I'm gone. You'll learn one day that silence isn't peace, it's discipline. It keeps you from speaking when words can't fix what's broken. Excellence doesn't announce itself, Thea. But it also doesn't hide forever. There will come a day when someone needs to hear what quiet strength sounds like. When that happens, don't whisper. Speak not with volume but with truth. And then put the rifle down." Tears blurred the page before she could finish. For the first time in years, she let herself cry. The next morning, she did something she hadn't done since childhood. She went to the cliffs at sunrise with no rifle, no uniform, no coin. Just the wind and the ocean. The horizon was clean. The light broke over the water in slow, deliberate color. Every wave sounded like breath. She thought of Ward, of her father, of all the men who measured life by distance and precision. And she realized the truest shot she'd ever taken was the one she hadn't fired yet, the choice to stop aiming. She whispered to the wind. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. The waves answered, rolling and steady and endless. And for once, that was enough. Years later, new plaques appeared in the sniper school hallway. One bore her name, Master Chief Thea Reigns, Instructor, Mentor, Operator. Below it, a single line engraved beneath glass. Excellence speaks in whispers, until the moment demands a roar. Students still walk that hallway every morning. Some pause to read it. Some don't, but those who do usually walk to the range a little quieter, a little steadier. Because the lesson isn't about how to hit a target. It's about how to live with the silence that follows. On quiet evenings when the sun melts into the Pacific, a figure sometimes sits on the bleachers near the 1,000-meter line. Older now, hair streaked with gray, eyes soft with distance. She watches the young shooters line up their rifles, breathe, hesitate, and fire. When one flinches, she murmurs under her breath, "Trust the wind." If they miss, she smiles. If they hit, she smiles too. Because either way, they're learning what she finally understood. That the rifle is only a translator. The real message comes from the silence between heartbeats. She closes her eyes, listening to the echoes fade into ocean air. In that space, she still hears two voices, her father's and her own, blending until she can't tell them apart. Let the rifle speak. It already has. The wind rises, scattering sand across the concrete like a slow salute. She stands, dusts off her hands, and walks toward the fading light. No fanfare, no announcement. Just the soft dignity of someone who's done aiming, and finally at peace. Moral reflection. Sometimes legacy isn't about the noise we make when we win, but the quiet we leave behind when we stop needing to prove that we can. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.